Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Nicola Donnelly, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Matthew Jackson. Today we commemorate the 110th anniversary of HMAS Sydney's defeat on the SMS Emden. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, the Australian fleet consisted of a battlecruiser, 6 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, 2 submarines, and support and ancillary craft. One of the biggest threats to the British trade routes in the Indian Ocean was the SMS Emden, a German cruiser that formed part of the German East Asiatic Squadron. Emden stalked Indian Ocean shipping routes, capturing or sinking 21 vessels and becoming the scourge of the Allied naval ships. HMAS Sydney was escorting the first convoy of Australian and New Zealand troops to Egypt when it received news of a strange vessel close by on Direction Island in the Cocos Islands. Sydney was detached to investigate the sighting, and on the 9th of November 1914, surprised the Emden while it was attacking the British radio station on the Cocos Islands. A short battle ensued, with the Sydney overpowering the Emden, which was deliberately run aground and sunk on North Keeling Island. This victory marked the first battle of the Royal Australian Navy. Several salvage operations were carried out on the wreck of the Emden, and 3 of the 4 guns found new homes in Australia, including here at the Australian War Memorial. Today we remember HMAS Sydney's defeat of the SMS Emden. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour, and to the survivors who returned home. This evening, we warmly welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Stoker Robert Thomas Houston. Robert Houston was born on 25th of February 1881 in Strathane, Ireland. He joined the Royal Navy at Chatham in England on the 5th of February 1900, shortly before his 19th birthday, and spent the next 12 years serving. Leaving the Navy on the 14th of June 1912, Houston emigrated to Australia, settling in Western Australia and enlisting in the Royal Australian Navy on the 1st of September 1914. After training at HMAS Cerberus, Robert joined the crew of HMAS Sydney as a stoker on the 29th of September 1914. A Chatham-class light cruiser, Sydney was the ship charged with escorting the first convoy of Australian and New Zealand troops from Albany in Western Australia to Egypt. Although most of the German Navy had withdrawn north at the outbreak of the First World War, German vessels still posed a threat to the Allied ships in the Asia-Pacific. Houston was on board Sydney during the ship's battle with the German light cruiser SMS Emden on the 9th of November 1914 and survived the fighting unscathed. The battle was a major triumph for the Royal Australian Navy, and the destruction of the last German radar left in the region removed the need for convoys to be escorted leaving Australia. Sydney arrived in Colombo on the 15th of November 1914 and sailed on to Malta in early December. From Malta, Sydney was ordered to Bermuda, where she joined the North America and West Indies stations for patrol duties for the next 18 months. Stokers were responsible for keeping the engine of the ship running, stoking coal and monitoring the boilers. Far below deck, behind watertight hatches, it was a dangerous job with little chance of survival if a ship was hit. From Bermuda and North America, Sydney sailed to England in September 1916. After a refit, she was attached to the 5th Battle Squadron at Scapa Flow in the Scottish Orkney Islands as part of the 2nd Light Squadron in the North Sea. From November 1916, Sydney was involved in North Sea patrols, frequently at risk of attack from German U-boats, raiders, aircraft, and zeppelins. In May 1917, Sydney fought a running engagement against the German Zeppelin L-43. The engagement only finished when Sydney had expended all the anti-aircraft ammunition on board and the L-43 all of its bombs. In early July, while Sydney was back at Scapa Flow, Houston and another crewman, Leslie Roberts, ran afoul of naval authorities. Although the details of their crimes are unclear, both men were sentenced to spend a week in the brig of nearby HMS Vanguard, a British dreadnought battleship. In the evening of the 9th of July, Vanguard was anchored at the northern part of Scapa Flow, while Sydney was anchored further south. At 11:20 p.m., cordite in Vanguard's main magazine exploded, causing a series of explosions. The ship sank almost immediately. Of the 843 men on board at the time of explosion, only 3 survived, with one of the survivors also dying of his wounds shortly after his rescue. Stoker Robert Thomas Houston was one of the 841 men to die in the explosion. He was 36 years old. Only 22 bodies were recovered from the water following the explosion. Houston's remains were not among them. Today, with no grave but the sea, he is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial in England, alongside the names of over 7,000 British, Australian, and South African sailors who died at sea during the First World War. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his memorial plaque is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Stoker Robert Thomas Houston, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.